Good afternoon, my name's John, and this week we're discussing what I have affectionately referred to as a breeding license. And it's the thought of should we require, morally or ethically, uh, people who want to have children to acquire a license to be a parent? Um, and it's a very interesting topic, so we're going to try to break this down in under 5 minutes. Going off of chapter 7, starting off, uh, very basic breakdown, in my opinion, is if you do it for one, you should do it for all. Um, and by that I mean all scenarios. So if you're going off what we've discussed in chapter 7, uh, yeah, you should require a breeding license. You require a license to have majority of jobs out there, from a lawyer to a doctor to a welder to a nurse, a paramedic, a fireman, a policeman. I mean, you name it, it requires you to have a certification or license proving you know what you're doing to be able to do it. So, to be a parent, should you not also prove that you know how to parent? Um, which is a pretty easy breakdown. Like I said, if you do it for one, you should do it for all. And since we require a license to do pretty much anything, even being a plumber, then, and I'm not knocking plumbing, then you should have to have a license to be a parent. Um, it's the same sense you go to chapter 6 where we talked about all things considered, and you kind of break it down. And to the best of my ability, I broke it down with a total result of -10, that no, you shouldn't require a breeding license. I came to this conclusion off of Cantonism. I said roughly a 7 to an 8. That would be a yes for requiring it, simply because if you require it for one, you should require it for all, uh, generally across the board. Utilitarianism, overall pleasure, best for the future. Well, obviously, I gave it a 50% of the population would not achieve a breeding license. So for that, I said, ultimate pleasure, ultimately best for everybody, would be, a 0 for utilitarianism, simply because you sway that right down the middle. Feminist care ethics, I gave it a -7 to -8 on the no scale, simply based off, it's about relationships. Well, again, if you did 50% of the population or more, uh, they're not going to have a family relationship if we deny them the ability to have families. Uh, at the same time, how would you feel if your daughter or your sister or your mother, after she had you, was then revoked and told she could no longer have any more? I mean, it really affects your family life, your core family unit. Um, and as far as virtue ethics, I took it into the thoughts of what about mentally handicapped? A person with Down syndrome or any kind of autism, even the most mild sense. They're not fully functioning. They can't have a driver's license. Is that to say they don't have the right to bear children? That they, aren't equals to all of us? Uh, and so I put that as an obvious -10 because as a virtuous man, I'm going to stand for the weak. And, I think they have a right to a happy, healthy life. Uh, when you go into coherence about all of these, you talk about all things being equal, not being wishy washy. So if we do it for one, we should do it for the other. Uh, however, it's a lot deeper than that in a sense. Just because we require a license to do so many things in America or around the world, uh, doesn't mean we have the right to license something that affects somebody's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Uh, and, a large chart of that is going to be your family. I mean, that's the reason America was created in the first place. And I'm not just talking about America, but I mean, freedom of religion, freedoms to be you, freedom to have a family. That's core basic virtues that each man is and woman is born with. Um, so if I had to go through all things considered, even though I do personally think you should have to have a breeding license to breed, it would help out breeding stupidity out of the world. Uh, I would have to say no. And a large part of that would be is what we've discussed, and furthermore of who would develop this test, who would set the standard on who is allowed to get this license? I mean, is it strictly an IQ test? Because if that's the case, then some of the greatest minds in the world who came from some of the most ignorant people in the world, uh, we would have been deprived of their knowledge and their gifts. Same thing can be brought many different ways. Just because you have a bad parent doesn't mean the offspring is going to be bad. I mean, it's one of those, you can't judge somebody by their family. You have to judge them for themselves. Um, I know I went over my 5 minutes, but there was quite a bit to talk about. Hopefully, I didn't go over too far for you, and I was able to hit a lot of the topics. Thank you, and have a great day.